Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, or rather welcome to the channel because this is I think my first video that I'm going to be able to post. I tried to do a detailed breakdown of one of Jon Stewart's recent videos, but the upload got copyright striked, so I'm still trying to figure out this whole YouTube thing. But for now I'm going to quote-unquote review a debate between Chris Cuomo and Dave Smith. And the reason why I'm putting the review in quotations is because really I think there's nothing of substance here that was really discussed. Not anything that is the fault of Dave Smith, of course, but more on the side of Chris Cuomo, who refused to engage with any ideas and in fact just, I think, killed time on purpose. He spoke rather slowly. He also filled the time he had with just random sentences that didn't really seem to contribute much, where he would posit, you know what the question is? Let me tell you what the question is. And here's the answer. Or just things like that mean absolutely nothing and just really are a filibustering technique in order to try and prevent Dave Smith from using more airtime. I actually think if there's one critique of Dave in this, is that he should have pushed a little bit harder, but I see why he didn't, because I think early on it was evident that Chris Cuomo was not going to engage with Dave in any meaningful fashion. This, of course, was a result of, or rather you could see this in this conversation which happened in the first hour, which is highlighted in this video clip, where, and I believe this video was posted around the morning of 6/1/2024, and this debate happened on 5/31. But regardless, early on in the debate, Dave Smith confronts Chris Cuomo over what Chris did during the COVID pandemic. Chris was, of course, a large contributor to lots of the hatred towards the unvaccinated. Hatred that I will say was totally unjustified and was actually evidence of the fact that we are not beyond the age of the Nazis. And that really, if similar circumstances were to occur again, that led to I believe, the rise of the Nazis in Germany, we would probably do the same thing here in America. Now that may be shocking to some people, but I really do truly believe that, and I think COVID was the prime example of that occurring. But regardless, this hatred of the unvaccinated and the mocking and the ridicule that occurred largely as a result of the pushing of corporate media and the lies that they spouted regarding the efficacy of the vaccine and the necessity to get the vaccine, something that was not supported by science at the time, and the fact that they would lie to you just straight to your face and saying that it would prevent transmission and that taking it would save grandma and doing all these other things, and also that they did not address the blatant hypocrisy in the middle of it all, which is, if it's so effective, why do I need to take it to protect other people? Why can't they just take it? Of course, there's a debate within that question regarding herd immunity, but it doesn't help that Fauci himself throughout the entire pandemic was constantly fucking with the numbers as to what herd immunity looked like, and then later admitted on record that he was doing it on purpose in order to try to motivate people to get vaccinated. He was constantly raising the number. I think it started somewhere around 70%, and then he would go 80, 85, and he would keep going higher and higher just so he could, quote-unquote, motivate those who were skeptical about the vaccine to get it, aka he wanted to fearmonger them. Now, this all aside, Chris Cuomo was just a pawn in this game. Honestly, I can't imagine what's going on inside of him because I think he's an empty shell. I think, frankly, he's a sock puppet for those in power, and he's not ashamed to actually do that. He's just ashamed to admit it. And that's what largely this video is going to discuss, is how Chris Cuomo dodges questions and valid criticisms that Dave Smith presents to him. And I think you're going to see Dave get exasperated in this interaction, because I think this is why Dave Smith did not push the envelope against Chris Cuomo. He just saw it wasn't going to go anywhere. And I think it's evident to the audience, at least those that were in attendance for sure, but also those that watch PBD, that Chris Cuomo is a failure. He's a moral failure of a man. In fact, I would not even call him a man. There's also a hilarious scene in the debate where he says that he would fight, or rather, where Dave Smith says that Joe Rogan, if Joe Rogan fought him, would destroy him. And then Chris Cuomo was like, oh, well, I don't know about that, which is hilarious. Like, I understand being as macho as the next guy, but most people that would fight Joe Rogan would lose. The man's just a one-man army. He's a monster. He's a tank. I'm sure he takes all kinds of supplements and other types of possibly HGH, other things, maybe even TRT. I'm not sure. I don't follow Rogan that closely. But on top of that, besides the fact that he's just a trained fighter, Chris would be annihilated. Just because you can pick up weights and that impress PBD for some odd reason doesn't mean that you would stand a chance against Joe Rogan. But that's the world that Chris Cuomo lives in. He is his own hero, even though he is absolutely nothing even close to a hero, and he's just a morally reprehensible husk of a man. But with that being said, let's just get into what Dave Smith questions Chris Cuomo about, which in this clip is the vaccines, and also Chris Cuomo's propaganda as relating to them and as relating to ivermectin, which was pushed at the time, as I'm sure many of you would recall, as a potential assistant to the symptoms of COVID-19. What Chris Cuomo is going to allege here is that it was painted as a panacea, where people are just supposed to take ivermectin and they're going to be totally fine. That is not actually what ivermectin was advertised to do. It was just, and especially in the case of Joe Rogan, it was given to him alongside a cocktail of other drugs, which Joe Rogan explicitly mentioned in the video clip that became infamous and went viral after CNN fucked with the coloring to make Joe Rogan look even more sick than he actually was. Is that Joe Rogan said, this is just one additional drug and a whole cocktail. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at it, and we're going to see if it works. And Joe Rogan got ridiculed for this because it was called, quote-unquote, horse paste, an idea that Chris Cuomo actually supported and fomented in his own speech on CNN. But let's let Dave Smith kind of highlight this, and hopefully we can jump in to just show how vapid Chris Cuomo is, and how empty he is, how morally reprehensible he is, and why PBD is absolutely deserving of the criticism that's been levied against him. And maybe in a separate video, I'll discuss how PBD revealed himself what his motivations are for hiring Chris Cuomo. But for now, we're going to watch Chris Cuomo get wrecked by Dave Smith.
Yeah, okay, so again, to take on what you just said, no, not everyone, and not everyone who gets paid. Joe Rogan is bigger than every single show at CNN combined and gets paid more than every single person at CNN combined. And he was 100% right about this thing through the entire time.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was.
No, he
wasn't.
wasn't.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me get this point out here.
Tell me what he was right about.
Okay, how about, you know what you just revealed last month on Pat's show about ivermectin?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan was saying that, and you were smearing him for saying that.
Yeah.
You literally said he's taking horse dewormer.
Yes.
He should be ashamed of himself. You pleaded with your audience to not take it.
Yes.
Then you come back around and you go, hey, Pat, you know what I just found out? Turns out this thing isn't for animals.
I want to jump in here because this image is actually the still taken from the video I was discussing, where CNN purposely messed with the coloring to make Joe Rogan look even more sick. This is a still from that. I believe this is the CNN discoloration video, but it might not even be the case. He looks very sick here. But regardless, what Chris Cuomo immediately does in defense when Dave Smith alleges that Joe Rogan got it right the whole time and also has more eyeballs and more monetization than all of CNN combined. That's obviously a sore spot for Chris, who loves to be the center of all attention in the world. Now, granted, he comes from a political family that's connected and savvy, but I also don't think that Chris Cuomo has very much to his own name. I think if he had a different last name, nobody would know who the hell he even was. But this aside, Chris Cuomo is adamant that Joe Rogan had got stuff wrong at the start. But the thing is that Joe Rogan wasn't really making that many assertions early on. He was just stating what was happening to him. He was saying that I was prescribed ivermectin by a doctor. It's not horse dewormer. Granted, it does function that way when prescribed by veterinarians to be given to horses for deworming, but it's also a medicine that's used to cure river blindness in Africa and all other kinds of issues that has been prescribed millions of times to millions of people, probably tens of millions. And it's highly effective, and it's one of the safest drugs we have, but also it's outside the whatever patent market is, so now you can get it extremely cheaply. This is a topic that's not exactly brought up by Dave Smith, which I think is a missed opportunity, but I also think he was afraid of derailing this conversation more or less into something that Chris Cuomo would just again use to filibuster even further about how pharma is good and pharma is bad. No, it's not a question whether pharma is good or bad. This is the question, and he would just constantly do the same thing throughout this entire debate, so I can see why Dave Smith probably elected to not bring it up. But I will bring it up here because I think it's a valid point. Ivermectin was a very cheap drug, and if there was a chance that it could help with COVID-19, it would totally derail the vaccination effort. Why? Because the vaccines were released under an emergency use authorization, or an EUA. And the EUA, one of the requirements to meet an emergency use authorization is that there is no other drug on the market, period, full stop, that can treat or alleviate the symptoms you're trying to treat or alleviate through the drug you're trying to push through the EUA. So that means pharma could not afford, even if ivermectin did nothing, they could not afford to give it the chance to do anything. Because if it could help even slightly alleviate symptoms of COVID-19, it would actually endanger the emergency use authorization that Pfizer and other vaccine companies were pushing for. And if they did not get the EUA, then they were not going to make their hundreds of billions of dollars. So what did they do? They funneled millions of dollars into news media corporations that went into Chris Cuomo's pocket or stuffed up his ass by the sock puppet master that uses his mouth as a speaking hole for any propaganda that they want to shot out into the radio waves. And as a result, ivermectin was demonized for no reason. And many people believe, still to this day, incorrectly, that it is only a horse dewormer. And then Chris Cuomo was going to brings up a point. Maybe it's in this clip, maybe it's not. But he says, "Oh, I was against the veterinary grade of ivermectin." Hello, the only thing you're going to have to worry about, ivermectin is the drug. It's just the dosage that you're going to have to worry about. Of course, a dose for a horse is going to be more than a dose for a man, but I can't imagine you're going to take an actual horse pill if you buy the veterinary version instead of one prescribed by a doctor. You would presumably take the dose that would be adequate for somebody of your size, because you are not a horse. But this goes above Chris Cuomo's head, and in fact, he believes he's fighting against this propaganda wave that was pushed that ivermectin was this cure-all, and that he was helping people stay safe by not taking the drug at all. But really, all he was doing was just overly dismissing it. If he was correcting, he was overcorrecting, and that's something that Dave Smith does not seem to address. Again, I love Dave Smith, and I think he did a great job throughout this, but I think he definitely could have pushed harder on Chris, and I kind of wonder why he didn't. I hope he'll do a part of the problem where he'll cover this debate. In fact, I'm sure he will, where he'll mention why he didn't push harder, because I've seen Dave go much harder on people like this, and he had Chris right in front of him and did not. So anyway, let's continue with this propaganda piece where Chris Cuomo believes Joe Rogan was not right, even though Chris Cuomo has admittedly begrudgingly, that Joe Rogan was right when it came to ivermectin, which is that it should not be demonized in the way it was. It should have just been allowed to be taken by people. And in fact, the fact that it was demonized kind of put it in the fringes of the medical community, which meant that doctors weren't prescribing it, and then people were going to buy the veterinary version, which was more readily available. They were just going to get access to the drug in different ways, not because the drug itself was bad, but because doctors were dismissing it as bad because of the propaganda that was being pumped into the bloodstream of modern media and then dispersed throughout the country. That led medical professionals to believe this to be the case. Because honestly, your doctor is not as well informed as you might think he is. So, or he or she, granted, let's be open-minded here. And as a result, they also just follow the same propaganda pieces that likely are pumped into your veins. So you need to be careful. You need to be diligent, and you need to present things to your doctor and keep presenting them to your doctor, even if he or she dismisses them out of hand. Actually, especially if he or she dismisses them out of hand. That is your duty to yourself, your body, and your loved ones, by the way, if you're advocating for somebody else, to make sure you do. Because medicine is an art. As much as they like to point it as a science, and that's strict, and it's about dosages, and it's about pills and all this other stuff. No, it is not. Your body is incredibly complicated. It is very much an art. It's very much a communication of what you are feeling, what is going on, and what is happening. And it's trying to get a peek under the hood, and then managing the consequences of what you are seeing and what the person is experiencing through the tools we have available to us, which largely at this time are drugs. But granted, that's another conversation about the pharmaceutical industry. So let's get back to Chris Cuomo and his denial of truth.
It turns out humans are, but Chris, that's a 5-minute Google search and you would have known that.
First of all,
how do you not apologize to Joe Rogan?
Listen, do you know who disagrees with you? Do you know who disagrees with you? The people who make ivermectin disagree with you.
Hold on. What do they disagree with me about?
That the drug should not be taken as a standalone for COVID-19.
I never said it should.
That's what Rogan was saying.
No. He did not. No, listen. See, this is the thing, Chris.
Yeah,
that is a lie. That is a blatant lie.
What did he say?
Rogan, so you just pretended that I said it's a standalone for COVID. No. Here's what it always was. Here's what Joe Rogan said. My doctor prescribed it to me, along with several other medications, just like your doctor prescribed it to you. That's what he said. What I'm saying is that it's not horse dewormer, as you and everybody else at CNN mindlessly repeated.
Now,
what he said, no, let me finish. What he said, and what I'm saying is that it is a medicine that's been prescribed to people millions and I think billions of times. And it was totally demonized. Why? You already said why. You said it 2 years too late, but you already said why.
Here's
because
why.
No one owned it.
Here's why. What Pat has on his desk right now, you do not want to take, okay? It is the veterinary grade ivermectin. People were so desperate to get it because they were told it was a panacea. It was a cure-all.
By who? Who told them that?
It was online.
I love the woman in the audience here, and I kind of she yelled at, heckled Cuomo quite a lot throughout the whole thing. But this is exactly the topic I was discussing previously. There where Chris Cuomo says that there was this kind of counter, that he was doing counter propaganda, though he would never use those words, I'm sure, against the fact that ivermectin was a panacea. Patently ridiculous. His own track record proves him wrong. He is nothing but an idiot. He's a useful idiot. He's a mouthpiece, and because he has, I guess, some form of modern attraction in terms of look and appearance to those that are of, let's say, older persuasion, older generations, he has sway with them, and so they use that in order to try and convince your grandmother, try and convince your grandfather that that ivermectin was dangerous. Anybody that tried to take it was an idiot and a moron, and it was equivalent of eating cat food. Why would you do that? It's not designed for you. It is for humans. It is. In fact, most medicines have cross-use between animals. You can give, I believe, Tylenol or ibuprofen to your cat, and it would work. Granted, it would have to be a much smaller dose. Allergy medicines also work on your cat. Benadryl works on your cat. All these other things have cross uses. Does that mean it's cat medicine? No. We can use it in humans. The dose just needs to be adjusted adequately. But did CNN say that? Never. And Dave Smith will bring this up. He'll bring up the fact that CNN and Chris Cuomo were negligent in their points, so I'll let Dave Smith do it, because honestly, Chris is just unbearable.
Well, you just claimed Joe Rogan said it. You claimed I said it. Neither of us have said that.
So hold on. So why was there a rush on ivermectin all of a sudden?
Can I tell you my honest opinion about that? Okay, it's that the medical establishment and the corporate media so humiliated themselves that they lost trust with the entire American people. And then, yeah, there were some charlatans online who were saying, "Oh, go take this," and they trusted them.
Please, here's what happened.
Okay? If you think Joe Rogan said, "Take any form of ivermectin you can get, and you'll never get COVID,"
I'm not blaming Rogan. Here's what happened. And
you should be apologizing to him.
And again, listen.
How to kill all mosquitoes in the area in just minutes. This simple but brilliant trick you can do tonight to eliminate.
Listen, here's what happened. Here's what happened. Also, let me tell you why I think apologies in this context are a stunt, okay?
Apologies in this context are a stunt. The fact that you were an arm of a propaganda campaign that was possibly one of the largest and most well-funded in U.S. history, in fact, in world history, easily. You apologizing for your role in that. You apologizing for being a husk of a man, one that had no moral devotion to anything, to any greater good, to any truth, to anything else. The one who took his paycheck, took it home, and slept in his bed and said, "I did good today. I defeated the horrible horse dewormer. I helped humanity." It is insane how Chris Cuomo can possibly look at himself and think that is true. He has deluded himself to such an extent that he is no longer connected with reality, with moral truth, or with God. I don't know if he is a religious person, and even if you're not, this concept of God is something that I think is true, which is that there is a higher power out there that it will judge you for what you have done. And it is not my place to say, but I sure as hell hope that Chris Cuomo meets that person sooner rather than later, or meets that entity, because I imagine that the justice that he is going to get for the actions he did will be befitting for what he did during that time, during COVID. And he may view that as a compliment. So if that's the case, Chris, then why don't we wager a little bet? When you go meet your maker, let's see if you're going to be rewarded or if you're going to be punished. I'll leave it at that. And it's exasperating. It's something that when I thought about making this video, it's the fine line between critiquing somebody and then critiquing their arguments. And I thought about, well, I need to try and critique Chris Cuomo's arguments. But the thing is he's not really making any. His argument is that it's a stunt to apologize. So I'm not going to apologize. That's not really an argument. Why is this a stunt? Why would it be a stunt to apologize? Is it because that then people are going to just think that they finally won the war? That they're right, that they defeated Big Pharma if they got Chris Cuomo to say, "I'm sorry, I was a mouthpiece of the establishment, and I did not stand up for what was right or just. And I vilified people, normal people, good people, every day when I went on CNN, and I did not speak out." Not only was I silent most of the time, not only did I also join in on the poking and the laughing and the ridiculing, but I never said anything edgewise. Even though he claims in front of PBD and others that, "Oh, you don't know what I was thinking inside." You don't know. I didn't agree with Don Lemon. I was just nodding along. I didn't say anything. Bullshit. That's exactly the problem. That you didn't say anything. You fucked up. You should have said something.
We don't accept apologies. Nobody accepts apologies except as an admission that you weaponize. That's why Trump never apologizes. He's right. Because if you apologize, everybody just beats you over the head with it.
Trump's got a lot to apologize for, and so do you.
I'm just saying,
You both
as a
should.
concept, and you should too on this, and I'll tell you why.
What should I apologize
Here's
for?
what happened.
Chris Cuomo never answers that question as to what Dave Smith should apologize for, because there's nothing Dave Smith should apologize for. Because why? Because Dave Smith tried in earnest. He tried. He was always true to what he thought was right. Now, we may disagree with that. We as viewers and as people may say, I think he was wrong. But that doesn't mean it was worthy of an apology. Right? Because he was trying to pursue the truth. He was trying his best in terms of pushing against narratives and all these other things. And he was ridiculed for it. He was lambasted, more than ridiculed. He was persecuted for it. Now, what's the difference between Dave Smith and Chris Cuomo? Is that Dave Smith wasn't making millions and millions of dollars, where it was obvious that he was pushing propaganda for something, and he was pushing words that were not his own. Dave Smith always spoke for himself. Chris Cuomo did not. He doesn't want to admit it because he's like, oh no, nobody at higher ups ever told me what to say. Yeah, bullshit. Do you know how I know it's bullshit? Because and maybe it's true they never came down and told you what to say, but that's because you were a good boy. That's because they never had to tell you, because you didn't bother pushing their line at all. You didn't try to pursue truth. You didn't try to pursue actual journalism. You did fucking nothing but sit there like a monkey in a suit and spit out the exact words that they wanted you to say. And you were so well goddamn trained that they didn't even need to come down and tell you to change a word from your mouth. They loved you because you were a good propagandist. So it's no defense of you, Chris Cuomo, that nobody on high came down to tell you what to say. In fact, it's a further criticism of you because it means that you were so compliant that they never had to scold you even fucking once. You did good for them. You made Papa money. Good job, son. Disgusting.
Ivermectin, it wasn't because the media said don't take it so everyone took it. The media would have never been talking about it unless people were taking it. Use your head. So here's what happens.
The media would have never been talking about it unless people took it. Use your head. Maybe the media was talking about it because they were being paid to talk about it. By pharma. Use your head.
They're prescribing it like crazy. They actually stop physicians from being able to prescribe it, which I think was a mistake. They then start giving out veterinary grade ivermectin, which...
They. It's all somebody else, not Chris Cuomo. He's innocent, after all. He just spoke the words that made it reality. But it's not his fault, guys. He was doing what he thought was right every time he took home his paycheck of blood money. He's the good guy.
As the word would suggest, you shouldn't take, right?
Doctors were prescribing veterinary?
No, people were desperately trying to get it online. They couldn't find it. Okay. Ivermectin is the most studied potential treatment for COVID of all of them, which was a complete waste of money. And it was all done just to play on the politics.
Do you know what's kind of funny here? Is that there's a slight admission that I find hilarious. Is that he said it was the most studied cure for COVID out of all of them, which would potentially include the vaccine, right? Now, you might say, oh, no. Vaccines aren't cures for things. They're preventive measures for things. So maybe that would be the word salad that Chris Cuomo would hide behind. And there is a valid point there if that is truly what he meant. But I don't find Chris Cuomo to be such an articulate speaker that I think he'd be making this to kind of distinction when he's on the spot. I think it was kind of an admission. Ivermectin was studied more than the vaccine, most likely, at least in terms of how long it's been around. Absolutely. It's been around for, I think, at least 50 years, 5 decades. So it was studied more, which means even if it didn't do anything, like Chris Cuomo is alleging, it meant it was safer. Especially since we know the consequences of ivermectin, which I believe is derived from like Japanese soil. It's like an element in the soil in Japan. It's not dangerous to your health because we have done the studies on it over 50 years to determine that that's the case. But for this vaccine, Chris doesn't have an answer to that. Do you know why? Because there's no hand up his ass right now telling him what to say and giving him a paycheck after they're done using his corpse. Because he's a dead man inside. Mark my words. There's nothing left to him that is redeemable, and that's why PBD made a mistake. He bought him on the cheap, on the dirt cheap, because he was cast aside by the corporate media, the dirty sock that they no longer wanted to use as their puppet. And so PBD saw a potential investment. This guy's price is at an all-time low. I see future here. I'm going to pick him up. Turn him into something big. But PBD, what you didn't realize is that they took everything from this man. Everything that makes him an upstanding citizen, and all he fucking did was charm you for a paycheck. He's a nobody, and he never will be anything. And that's what everyone who sees him knows. They see that he's dead inside.
Politics of this. Merck, that made ivermectin, put out a statement during this saying, we do not advise it to be used for COVID-19. You can't find research that is seen as impressive by the research community that proves that ivermectin is effective in treating COVID-19.
Notice that this is a moved goalpost from his previous statement that ivermectin was painted as a panacea for all COVID-19 and it could be taken as a standalone. Now he's saying, look, this is supported by the idea that they said, oh, you shouldn't take it to treat COVID-19. That could be true, but can it be used to treat symptoms of COVID-19? Maybe it can't treat COVID-19 as a standalone, but maybe it'll help in some of the symptoms of COVID-19 when taken alongside other things. He's speaking on things as if they directly refute the assertions made by Dave Smith, but they don't at all. They're not the same thing. And this is where Chris Cuomo is delusional. He constantly paints way too broad with all of his assertions, and then therefore he is good, because it's easy to think you're good when you're painting in broad strokes like that, because evil is in the details, my friend. True evil lurks just underneath the surface.
Rob can find you 100 studies, right? Listen, you're wrong on this.
No, I'm not.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because they're mad at me too, by the way. You think you guys are alone?
So, but
no.
why are you taking it
Here's
then?
why.
Again, he's appealing to the fact that he thinks his critics think they're special, which means is the justification for their critique of him. He says, you think you are alone, as if that's a valid criticism of their anger, where, oh, you know what, other people are angry at me too, so you guys shouldn't be like, what, I'm just a victim. No, dude, people are mad at you because you fucked up at multiple levels. Your corporate overlords are mad at you because you became a useless puppet. You crossed the line too much to where they could keep you and pretend that you were objective while peddling lies to the people. You fucked that up so bad that they couldn't even keep their favorite fucking sock puppet. But we're mad at you. We, the people, are mad at you because of that role you played there. So I don't care if the corporate overlords are mad at you. That is not a sign of your bona fides. Because you served them the entire time and have shown nothing edgewise. That's the point of an apology. You show you've changed. You show you've learned. You show you've developed. But you haven't done that, Chris, and you won't do it because you're too fucking proud to say that you were wrong, that you were used, that you were an idiot. Instead, you hide behind this facade of justice and that you are amazing because you are a victim, that both sides are angry at you, which means you must be in the middle. You must be the reasonable person. No, Chris. No, you're not. I don't care if the authoritarians are upset at you. That doesn't mean you're in the middle. Authoritarians can be upset at you for you not following their fucking orders. Exactly to a T. They could also be upset at you because maybe you wore the wrong shirt on fucking Show Your Allegiance Day. So which was it, Chris? Did you disobey their orders? I don't think you did. You just showed more allegiance to your brother than you did to your corporate overlords, and they said that's enough. Company over family, Chris. I'm surprised we even had to tell you this. You usually are such a good soldier for us. But this time we can't use you anymore because people don't trust you. So goodbye. Later, Chris. And they dropped you. And PBD picked you up. And now you think that you can just carry on because it's now a badge of honor that you're hated by the corporatists and the ones that push propaganda? You're not hated by them, Chris. They don't even fucking think about you anymore. You're a nobody. You just pretend you are somebody. Because your last name is Cuomo. And you live in the shadow of your fucking father, and you always have. And the best thing you're going to achieve, the only way that people are going to remember your name, is as an arm of the propaganda machine. Because trust me, we're not going to forget. And that's why we're not going to watch you. Until you apologize. But even then, we might not. You have to be actually repentant to earn forgiveness. You have to do something to earn forgiveness. And you have done nothing, Chris. Nothing at all.
My doctor, I didn't take it during COVID-19. And I didn't take hydroxychloroquine when I was sick with COVID-19, even though a lot of people thought they were being nice by sending it to me. Why? Because the research isn't there. That's why. With long COVID, okay? Not long vax, that's a different thing. If it's going to get recognized as such. I don't know. They won't say that yet. Long COVID, they're now saying exists. There is research. Is it dispositive? No.
So one addenda here from me is that, or rather one addendum, I suppose, is that Chris Cuomo is talking about long COVID as if this is a new development. Long COVID came out right around when COVID first started. I remember seeing headlines about it, and then it just disappeared from the media. It disappeared. And now it's back, but now it's being intermingled with long vaccine, which I think is a much more likely cause of these long-term fatigue and other symptoms that people are experiencing and are attributing to COVID. But I digress. I just wanted to highlight that and say that Chris is kind of painting them as two separate things, but I think they are absolutely related.
Do the people on the government levels and the research communities like that I said that I'm taking it? No. Do they think I'm setting myself up for lawsuits? Yes. But my doctor, I believe, is in the vanguard of people who are figuring out long COVID. Okay. And she has a lot of the same problems, by the way, with me and with the pandemic that you do. And she has found research, and she has had her own experience in using it in a combination with many other things where she believes it may be able to help. Now, I've been taking it. I don't feel any better. Does that mean it doesn't work? No. But
it's
that's
safe.
why I'm taking it.
It's safe and it's not horse-paced.
It is definitely
so
safe, but it's not horse-paced because it's not horse-paced.
But
that is horse-paced.
By the way, no one ever at CNN during this time, when they were all saying it's horse dewormer, everyone was repeating, no one ever said, we're talking about the veterinarian ivermectin.
Ding, 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 Dave. Exactly on point. I'm very proud that Dave brought this up. I think that was definitely needed because Chris Cuomo is drawing imaginary lines here, where he says, oh, everyone understood this to be the case, but no, they did not. How could they understand that to be the case? You never said anything otherwise.
We're not talking about the ivermectin that doctors prescribe. Right. No one ever said that. But listen, you told me I should apologize. So what do you think I should apologize for? And then I'll tell you what I think you should apologize for.
Well, I know what you think I should apologize for. Obviously, there was so much talk.
Again, needlessly combative there when he says, oh, I know what you think I should apologize for, as if it's some kind of thing to be ashamed of, or that Dave Smith is overly combative and aggressive. Dave has been treating this guy with kid gloves, frankly. And so Chris is just overly sensitive to this, and you can tell he feels antagonized by his responses. And he elaborates on this further when he talks about how whenever anybody is better than him, he gets so defensive. He hates it. Chris Cuomo is just the best guy, man. Everyone knows. They just love Chris. And so if you say one thing bad about him, then all of a sudden you're unreasonable and you're a monster. And oh, I know what you hate about me. You hate stupid stuff. Ridiculous.
That they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like
You did it.
No. Okay,
yes,
good.
you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe.
This is going to be the operative part of this whole thing, where Chris Cuomo just loses, so I love it.
Rogan.
Find the
you
clips.
said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No.
I'll go find
First
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I'm
not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
the point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and
Here's,
it's absolutely
look,
there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Go ahead.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh, my God. What person? You know, you talk about, like, cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, Really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's
No
what
one
it
has to
is.
shame them. They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now,
This
Chris.
is
Chris,
the
you can't
dewormer.
apologize for that. You
See, so now again, he's drawing the imaginary line. Oh, I was talking about them taking the veterinary version that they were taking, which again, I don't really see a distinction here because if it contains if it is ivermectin, it's the same drug, Chris. It's just a matter of dosage. But you're going to see that Chris is adamant that that clip did not show what Dave Smith just said it was, which was him ridiculing people for having an interest in ivermectin. Because, everyone knows we were just talking about the veterinarian medicine. We were clearly talking about just the veterinarian version of ivermectin. Then why wouldn't you say veterinary ivermectin? Why just ivermectin? Because the human version of ivermectin, which has been more prescribed, by the way, than the veterinary use of it. So it is default by usage, human medicine, if we are taking a majority determining what the medicine's function is. Then why didn't you clarify? Why did you just say ivermectin? Why did you just say ivermectin? Why didn't you say veterinary ivermectin? Because you were purposely confusing the issue, and now you're trying to hide behind the fact that, people were using it for veterinary grade, so that means that's what we were arguing about, that's what we were saying. No, you jackass. If that was the distinction, only you got it. Whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess. Ridiculous.
weren't being clear that it was this,
right.
and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not being
You were
dishonest.
talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about this version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was responding to a situation where we were told that this is what people were searching out to take, and nobody knew what it was going to do to them. Look, I'm taking the drug right now. Obviously, I don't think it's all poison.
This face by Dave Smith is where I think that this is where he knew it was going to go nowhere. And this is why I think he didn't push harder. It was at this point that he knew that this was all he was going to get from Chris Cuomo. He is too built in on his lies and delusions to change his mind. So that at this stage, a debate is pointless other than highlighting the fact that Chris is a monster. And I'm not ashamed to say that. And that may be giving too much credit to Chris, but he is nothing. He's empty. He has no moral backbone. And that's what Dave Smith realized. He will not admit he's wrong because he has no concept of right or wrong. He just has a concept of what was. This is what was. This was, we were told. Really? Do you do everything you're told? Do you trust everyone that tells you anything? Do you never do any independent verification? Did you ever Google ivermectin? As Dave Smith accurately said, 5 minutes of Googling would allow you to determine that this was an actual medicine given to humans? Nope. He didn't do that. Because he was arguing against the veterinary version of ivermectin. But funny enough, I don't see clips of him saying, this is a disclaimer, guys. We're talking about the veterinary ivermectin that people are buying from shelves. You know why? Because it's a false distinction. Because it's the same drug. Just in different doses.
Right now, obviously, I don't think it's all poison. I stopped calling it the horse drug when, and you can not like it, CNN's chief medical officer, who is Sanjay Gupta, said to me, you shouldn't just call it a horse dewormer. There's a whole legitimate aspect of the drug. I wouldn't use it for COVID-19, but it's not just a veterinary grade. So I stopped calling it that.
So, okay.
And then it went away.
By the way, I don't know if you guys saw.
So you see what he skated over here? No questions about how the chief medical officer did not immediately notify people that, hey, FYI, this is also a human medicine. Even their in-house doctor did not have any critiques for it until much, much later. They were running with this storyline for months, at least, when it came to ivermectin. And it was only after Gupta came back from his Joe Rogan experience that a couple weeks later, I believe, he told these people, hey, we need to stop saying this. Like, this is becoming a problem because we're losing the propaganda war. Because Joe Rogan is fucking killing us. We look stupid. And I know we look stupid because I went on there and I looked stupid. They only changed because they were made to look like fools. Nothing else. And even then, it was such a small concession. The concession was, hey, we are going to accurately describe what the drug is. But we're going to keep pushing all the other propaganda. Because at this point, we served our usefulness. it's despicable at every level. And Chris is refusing to ask questions. And him, there is no gap in the history. There is no issue with the history because it happened that way. It happened that way. So, of course, that's the way it was supposed to go. It's of course, it was good. He's just pleading with the eventuality of the circumstance that he's in. It's like, oh, it happened, so it was fine. It's like, no, idiot. There were so many things that you could have done to make it better, and you didn't. And in fact, you just contributed to making things worse.
Saw this. One of the best moments during the pandemic was when Dr. Gupta, who was just mentioned, went on Joe Rogan's podcast. For all the days of CNN like demonizing Joe Rogan, they send their top doctor out there onto his show, and he goes, why is everyone on your network saying I'm taking horse dewormer? Ivermectin's not. And Dr. Gupta looked down at his lap and went, yeah, no, they shouldn't be saying that.
That is actually exactly how it went down. Almost word for word. That's how it went down. Because Gupta did admit, like, no, they shouldn't be saying that. And he did do it with his head down, and he did do it in a softer tone. It's true. And watch Chris deny it.
Well, Sanjay was the one who corrected
there was
us.
a better,
Sanjay was the one who corrected us.
No, actually, after that, he went back and laughed as Don Lemon called it horse dewormer again, and then I guess later corrected you guys. But then there was a moment, and this was the best moment, and you got to remember the context of this. This was during the vaccine passports. Okay, the point when the people like me, and I'm sure a lot of you, were basically turned into second-class citizens, weren't allowed to go into restaurants, weren't allowed to go to sporting events, weren't allowed to go into a lot of different office buildings, things like that, and you, personally, along with everyone at CNN, cheered that on. You mused and joked around when you were interviewing Dr. Fauci about what rights the unvaccinated should have. So Dr. Gupta goes to Joe Rogan and says, it is in the middle of all this. He goes, so you're going to get the vaccine? And Joe goes, no, I just had COVID. Why would I get it? I got
Also a pretty good Joe Rogan impression.
natural immunity. It's stronger than the vaccine. And Dr. Gupta went, yeah, that's a good point. He had nothing for him. He had no response. Like when you were, listen.
That's not even close to accurate. Okay?
Yeah, well, remember last time we played the clip and I was right? Remember last time?
You weren't right about that either.
See, he's saying that Dave Smith was not right, and I think his distinction is that Chris Cuomo wasn't chuckling. And then also, he was talking about the veterinary ivermectin and not normal ivermectin, which again is delusional. So yes, Chris did not chuckle in that, but Don Lemon did chuckle. So I think we can forgive Dave Smith for saying that you were chuckling with your friend, because Don Lemon chuckled, for sure. But then even then, that's not the operative point. The operative point is that you were constantly contributing to the dehumanization and criticizing of invalid criticism of those who wanted to take ivermectin just to try it because it was cheap. That was true. But he's hiding behind the fact that, oh no, that wasn't true because I was talking about the veterinary version there. Clearly. No, jackass, you weren't.
You weren't right about that
Chris,
either.
dude, you're in denial here, man. It's so clear that you said that. Just admit it, man, and we can move on.
Again, here's the main difference.
All right, catch PBD's face on this. I don't usually like to focus on this. I'm not a big body language guy, but look at how he looks away in disgust here.
We can move on.
Again, here's the main difference.
You catch that? He looks away. He's exasperated, disgusted. He hated that answer from Chris. Absolutely hated it. Because to him, that looks awful. Looks horrible. I just catch it one more time. Because seriously, this is showing that I think there was some realization on PBD's half that he made a bad investment. And it's starting here. I think this debate is crucial. If there's any change in the Chris Cuomo position on the Patrick Bet-David podcast and Valuetainment, or more broadly in Valuetainment, it's this moment right here.
Man, and we can move on.
Again, here's the main difference. You may not say it this way, but this is what.
And him turning his head the other way and then moving his hand up to scratch his ear. First of all, that's a self-soothing mechanism, most likely. We would have to analyze PBD a little bit more in order to see how often he does something like this. But it's also an attempt to mask what he's doing. When you put your hand up like that towards your face, generally you're trying to mask your expression. He covers for it by scratching at his ear. But really, I think it's because he knew that he made a face. and then realized that he had to cover for it, so then he turned the other way to try to make the turn away look more natural, right? Because when you turn away from somebody, that's a common sign of disgust. You can't even look at them. And so he realized he did that, and then he turns the other way to try and cover for it. So like, no, guys, I'm just like stretching my neck or whatever, or like, oh, you know, whatever, both sides, my head. And then he brings his hand up to cover his facial expression when he turns his head the opposite direction, rather when he turns his head back to Chris Cuomo. He's trying to hide his disgust. PBD is a very knowledgeable guy when it comes to human interactions, but even the most knowledgeable person can't hide their expression at all points in time when camera and lights are on them, etc. So I truly think PBD showed disgust here, and then he tried to hide it afterwards.
I think you're suggesting. You believe that you were demonized for not taking the vaccine, and that was wrong because it was right to not take the vaccine.
Okay. No. I don't.
So again, look at this categorization that he's making. Oh, you were mad because you thought it was wrong to take the vaccine. So and you were forced to, and so it was right for you to not take the vaccine. No. We're not saying it was right for you to not take the vaccine. I mean, granted, that is a separate argument, but that we didn't really even know that at the time. We were just saying it's wrong to force you to take the vaccine. That's it. That's the extent of the argument. We don't need to go beyond that to be justified in our anger. It was wrong to force people to do it. You had no reason to do it. No actual justification to do it. You just did it because you could. And because you wanted to. Or rather, because Pharma wanted to. But he's constantly painting it as like, oh, you were mad because you thought you were right and you were mad that people didn't agree with you. No. We were mad that people were imposing things on us. I don't care if they agree with me about being right or wrong, because time will prove who is correct. What I care about is them being so certain that they were correct that they were forcing it on everyone else. Because that is wrong.
First of all, I don't believe I was demonized for taking the vaccine. We just played video proof.
Okay, excellent distinction there made by Dave Smith. One that when I was listening, I didn't even catch, because Cuomo is actually pretty good in his picture painting. The big thing I caught up on was like, no, like I said, you thought you were right. But Dave Smith even broke down even further, where he said, no, it's not that I believe I was victimized. Or rather persecuted. I was persecuted. So good job, Dave. Good job deconstructing this. It was an excellent approach.
Of it. Me, and it's not me, it's me and tens of millions of Americans were demonized to take the vaccine. Now, when you say it was wrong because you weren't supposed to take the vaccine, I think, and this is summing up a lot in a short period of time, I think there was a strong argument in the initial wave of COVID, if you were old and sick and had never had COVID, it might have been a good idea to
what
take
if you
the
lived
vaccine.
with someone who was old and sick?
That probably wouldn't have done anything. Literally, it's not going to stop.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I think Dave is right here. I think the evidence and time passing by proves Dave correct. Because Cuomo has this idea that the first wave of COVID was largely mitigated by the vaccine rollout. That like it helped so much because there were reports that were given about hospitalization and how hospitalization rates were higher for the unvaccinated and lower for those that were vaccinated. But hospitalization only occurs in severe cases. And it's true, you are more contagious the more severe your symptoms are, because the contagion of COVID was linked to the severity of your symptoms and how you presented symptoms. But even then, that came into question later on, where there were people that were carriers that didn't present any symptoms at all, but were still contagious. So really, I'm speaking out of something that it could be both. But let's just take it at Chris Cuomo's, what I assume Chris Cuomo would say is true, is that, when you're contagious, when you're symptomatic, you're contagious, right? But then what the vaccine did, even in the first stage, it did not protect you fully. It just mitigated the chance that you would get sick. And if you did get sick, it would mitigate the symptoms, but not entirely. You would still have symptoms, which means you would still be contagious, which means even this vaccinated person living with vulnerable grandma, who is not only old, but has a pre-existing medical condition that leaves her extremely vulnerable to death when exposed to COVID, even then the vaccine is not going to help. Because if you get sick and you have symptoms, you're still going to get grandma sick. It was that virulent. It was that contagious. But Cuomo won't engage with that. He'll just say, no, my study said that this was right, and you're wrong. But Chris, your studies were bought and paid for by the same corporation that bought your fucking mouth and used your voice. It's just ridiculous. He puts his faith in the institutions more than he should, and Dave brings that up. I don't know if it's in this clip, but he does criticize Cuomo for saying, you put too much faith in the government and the institutions instead of questioning them, which is what you should be doing as a journalist. But Chris isn't a journalist, so he doesn't take any offense to that critique.
You don't know what you're talking
I do know what
about. The
I'm talking
science is
Chris.
obvious on this. The first, look.
I love the guy in the crowd. The science. Let's catch that again. Because that was my immediate reaction as well.
I know what you're talking about.
No,
you don't know what you're talking
I do know what
about.
I'm talking about.
The science is
Chris.
obvious on this. The first, look,
Again, the science is like the Bible. It's just an appeal to authority. It's as if it's a religious maxim where it is true because it is part of the science. It's part of the scripture. It's just ridiculous. It's not. Science doesn't operate that way. Science is meant to be the antithesis of religion, but what we have done in this religiousess age is we've turned science into the new religion, where now you believe in it. You believe in science. Science is a process. It's not a conclusion. You can't, and so but people are believing in the conclusions and saying that their belief is justified by the science. It's like, no. The funny thing about science is that those conclusions could change. Now, I know many people will say, oh, but scientific theory is a practical certainty. Sure. But do we know if it applies throughout the entire universe, throughout the entire galaxy? Do we know for sure? We kind of don't. But regardless, this is getting into a different topic, but I just wanted to bring that up where he's appealing to the dogma of science rather than making an actual argument and saying that the science is clear. The science says you're wrong. It's ridiculous.
You got a lot of nerve not apologizing and then telling me I don't know what I'm talking about.
What do you want me to apologize for? For telling people to take the vaccine?
Okay, let's just stick with Joe Rogan. For mocking and smearing a person from the #1 show at CNN and then years later admitting he was completely right about what he said. How is that not attached to an apology? If I ever smeared someone aggressively and then 2 years later I had to admit that I come out and just say what you said to Pat on his podcast was exactly what Joe Rogan was saying this whole time. You go, first of all, it's not horse dewormer, it's used on people, it's very safe, and my doctor prescribed it to me. That's why I'm taking it. Yes, if I ever did that to someone, I would apologize for that.
That's because Dave is a moral person, and he's talking to somebody who is not a moral person. I think most people in this audience and most people that follow PBD would fall in the category that Dave Smith is proclaiming, where if you did that, if you smeared somebody, criticized them, called them stupid, called them dumb over a specific topic, and then it came out that they were right and you were wrong, and you are a big public figure and you did it over public mediums, then you should apologize. I try to live by certain words, and there are certain phrases that always stuck with me, and they came from the show Little House on the Prairie. It's possible they were also in the book series, but I never read the books. I only watched the show. And it came from Pa Ingalls, or Charles Ingalls. He had 2 phrases. First was money on the barrel, right? Which meant don't take out debt. You pay for it up front, which I think is a very good advice in the modern day because too many people are enticed by the ability to leverage by using debt to make even more money, that they just take on debt as if it's not an issue. So I respect that. Money on the barrel. Don't go in debt. That's one thing. The second thing, which is applicable here, which he told to his daughter, Laura Ingalls, is that if you hurt somebody in public, you need to apologize in public. You can't do the wrong in a public way and then apologize privately, because then you're getting off easy and the other person suffered more. You have to apologize in a commensurate way that you inflicted the issue. That you inflicted the evil. And I think if everyone followed those rules, we'd live in a better society. And this apology rule, Chris Cuomo does not give a shit about. He's not going to apologize because it's a stunt, guys. Remember, what he was doing wasn't a stunt. It was virtuous. I don't even know. It was just virtuous, guys, because that's what was going on at the time. But him apologizing now, that's not virtuous. It's a stunt. And I did nothing wrong.
But it's not the right context.
He knows he's trapped here. Like, he knows he's trapped. He knows he's beat. And so he defaults again to like, oh, but it's not the right situation. This is clearly a political stunt. Like, what's the context, Chris? The context be, if we're following Pa Ingalls, is that you tried to ridicule, or you did ridicule, Rogan in public. And now you are in public. You still have an audience. In fact, this is probably the biggest audience he's had in a very long time, since CNN. There are lots of people watching this debate. This would be the prime time to apologize. Now, if he said here, no, I don't think I should apologize here. I should apologize to Rogan to his face. Then sure, you could do that. But say, I want to go on Joe Rogan's podcast and apologize to him there in public. Because just apologizing to his face means you apologize in private, and that's not enough. Because you ridiculed him in public. So you need to apologize in public. That's how it works. But he doesn't say any of that. He just says, no, it's not warranted because it's a stunt.
And right, first of all, it's both, right? It's veterinary grade and human grade. I was not making a market.
Which one do you think Rogan was taking?
I hope he was taking the human grade if he was prescribed it.
Which one do you think Joe Rogan, who just signed his second $200 million deal, was taking? Do you think he was stealing it out of the cat bowl, or do you think he had a doctor
I'm sure they prescribed it.
So then you guys were all wrong for demonizing him.
I think that it was wrong.
Dave fucking dog walked Chris right there. I want to go back and listen to that again. Just watch how he takes him step by step, and Chris can see it happening too. He bites his lip when Dave starts doing this.
I was saying this whole time. You go, first of all, it's not horse dewormer, it's used on people, it's very safe, and my doctor prescribed it to me. That's why I'm taking it. Yes, if I ever did that to someone, I would apologize for that.
But it's not the right context. And right,
when Dave speaks up again, he bites his lip. Watch.
Veterinary grade and human grade. I was not making a market.
Which one do you think Rogan was taking?
I hope he was taking the human grade if he was prescribed it.
Which one do you think Joe Rogan, who just signed his second $200...
Did you catch it right at the end where he moves his lip into his mouth? And you could say he's licking his lips here, but it's very clearly a bite because his bottom lip comes in towards his mouth. And so it's a sign that he knows that Dave is starting the dog walk, and Dave completes it.
$1 million deal was taken. Do you think he was stealing it out of the cat bowl, or do you think he had a doctor
I'm sure they prescribed it.
So then you guys were all...
I'm sure they prescribed him the drug. I hope it was the human version of the drug. He's constantly dancing around it. He's admitting it, quote unquote, but he's not. He's always distancing himself. It's another rhetorical strategy, and Dave Smith is having none of it. He keeps pushing the issue.
Wrong for demonizing him.
I think that it was wrong. Look, you guys want simple answers.
See, so what he does here is actually very clever for Cuomo. He uses the audience interjection to deny the answer. Watch as he redirects. He uses the audience to try and redirect from the situation he's in. If I was the audience here, Dave had been a vice. I wish the audience didn't say anything, because now Chris Cuomo has an out.
You guys want simple answers to this, and it's not simple.
No, this is simple. This one is simple.
It's not.
So Dave resumes the pressure because he realizes that Chris is trying to segue to use the audience to escape.
Simple.
The vaccine question might be more difficult. This is really simple, man.
The maker of the drug. You want me to apologize when the maker of the drug says don't use it for COVID, when all of the research says it is not effective for COVID.
Well, okay, first of all,
I should say Joe Rogan was right to say take it.
Chris,
there was a rush on
it. What are we even arguing about here? You're on the drug.
Long COVID is different. Long COVID is different.
Okay, see, again, Chris is dodging the issue, and this is where I would hammer the hypocrisy, but I understand why Dave did not, because again, you can see in his expression here that he realizes that Chris Cuomo is purposely being intransigent, which I think he is. I think this is intentional on Chris's part. Chris is constantly confusing the issue of saying, oh, no. My critique of ivermectin then was that they were taking the veterinary grade, but then even if they weren't taking the veterinary grade, then it was a study that said that it wasn't actually a good drug to take for COVID. Right? Okay, so he's defending himself in two fronts there. But the issue is that he was portraying every version of ivermectin as the veterinary grade. That's dishonest, right? That's worthy of apology. But then even then, in the second portion, he criticized Joe Rogan for doing the exact same thing that Chris Cuomo is now doing, which is Joe Rogan went to a doctor and the doctor prescribed him ivermectin for the symptoms he was feeling. But Chris Cuomo is saying, no, I'm different because I have a different underlying illness. And this is why Dave facepalmed, because Dave is like, no, you fucking idiot. The point isn't the underlying illness. The point is that he was prescribed by a doctor this medicine that you were saying was horse dewormer. You could have been prescribed it for a fucking headache, and it would be the same point. The same point, which is that you were lying when you were on CNN. But Chris purposely obfuscates, and he tries to dodge, and that's why I think Dave is fed up. I truly think this clip encapsulates why Dave did not push harder on Chris, because he knew it would just go in circles. I think Dave had other things he wanted to hit Chris with to see if he could break the shell.
Different.
Okay, so first of all, just to be clear.
All right, Chris, I'm sorry, maybe I should just do a body language channel at this point, but watch Chris go do an appeal to authority here when he checks up on PBD. Look at this look that he gives PBD. We don't get to see what PBD's response is, but this is as much as like, I'm sorry, this is, I tried. Just look.
Okay, so first of all,
it's a display, right? Because you see him, you watch the exaggerated facial feature here. It's like exaggerated exasperation, and you can tell because his eyes are lower right for too long. It's not actually authentic exaggeration because he's looking down like, well, that's it. That's all I could do, which is what you do when it's a performance. When you're actually exasperated, your eyes go up, because you're looking up and your head tilts back. But he's tilting down here, which means it's a performance, right? It's not real. It's not authentic exasperation here. And then he looks to PBD to see if he's buying the performance.
Okay.
Right? PBD here. He looks. Which is a combination of like, oh, well, this is it. This is what we got. This is where I stand. And it's a long look, too. It's not. He's definitely trying to make eye contact here with PBD, and I don't know if PBD returns it.
So first of all, just to be clear, and this
part of me wonders if he did. Because when he looks away, when Chris looks away, Chris blinks. Like, he almost looks, he blinks and refocuses. Like, he's definitely averting his gaze when he looks away. Because he refocuses, before he turns back to Dave, he refocuses at a random point in the audience, kind of center with the camera almost.
First of all,
and then he looks over.
To be clear, and this is essentially the truth.
So, I don't know. This is all speculation and lots of body language moolah, but he's putting on a show here. It's definitely not an authentic position from him because everything he's doing is a performance.
Right? There were some studies that seem to indicate that if you take ivermectin early in a COVID infection, there seem to be some positive benefits. Then there were other studies that basically said, no, we're not seeing that. Now, I've heard a lot of experts, and this goes beyond my pay grade, argue that those other studies weren't properly done. Whatever it is, the reason why doctors were prescribing it to people like Joe Rogan and millions of other Americans was they were like, look, it's a mixed bag with the study. Some of them seem to indicate it might help. Some indicate it doesn't. But we know the drug. It's a people drug, and it's safe. So why not take this in your regimen along with a bunch?
So this is exactly the point. Dave is reframing the point that I exactly highlighted, which is that the lie was that it wasn't a people drug, and the lie was that it was dangerous. Every drug is dangerous if you take too much of it. Every drug. Of course. But the lie is what the framing was from CNN and Chris Cuomo, was that ivermectin is intrinsically dangerous because it's not a human medicine. It's a horse dewormer, right? And therefore, it has no usage in humans. That's the message that was heavily implied, if not outright stated. And so Dave Smith brings it back to the focus point here. I think in this past 3 minutes from Dave was perfect. I have no critique of it. It was absolutely stunning. I think he did a perfect job in highlighting these points and dog-walking Chris Cuomo. And that's why Chris had to appeal to PBD, because he knows he got fucking walked.
Bunch of other things. That's the point. And
I think that's fair.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Okay.
And you see, Chris has to concede. He knows he's in a bind. He knows he is. He has to concede it. But again, it's not a true concession because he says, I think that's fair. Everything that you described is fair. That we were misrepresenting it. That's a fair description. But we did nothing wrong.
That's why they were prescribing it. I don't think they were prescribing it to be reckless.
No, that's right.
I think that's why they're prescribing it. But here's the problem with what you guys want, okay? It is not some research says take it, some research says don't, okay? It's just not that way, all right? And it's not even close. I'm telling you, I have not spoken with anyone in preparation for coming here tonight who said you can say ivermectin works with COVID.
That woman killed him, which was except for your doctor. When he said, I haven't spoken with anyone. And she was like, oh, except for your doctor said that ivermectin works because she prescribed it to you.
That is, my doctor does believe it can be effective. She is
She then followed up by saying, so she's cool.
cool. Her name is Dr. Robin Rose, and if you have long COVID, or someone you know has long COVID, look up Terrain Health, Robin Rose. She's doing her best. But the point remains the same. The point remains the same. What did he say? I didn't catch that.
So what the other guy in the audience here said is that, is she a veterinarian? Which is what caused everyone to laugh, because Chris Cuomo was saying that ivermectin was a horse dewormer. So clearly, if he's getting it prescribed from a person in the medical field, she must be a veterinarian. But regardless, what Chris Cuomo isn't acknowledging here is that aren't long COVID symptoms very similar to COVID symptoms? So how is it that you can be prescribed ivermectin and it works on long COVID symptoms, but it doesn't work on COVID symptoms? Not even a little bit? Seems odd. Seems, what would you call? Cognitively dissonant. This distinction he's making, I think, isn't real. Because long COVID is just COVID symptoms drawn out. But I digress.
Say it again. I didn't hear it.
Is she a veterinarian?
Oh, that's funny.
If you're watching this, the way you get to vote.
All right, so this is pretty much the end, because now it's about voting through Minect, which is PBD's pet project in terms of trying to out-lawyer lawyers in terms of charging people money for time. But regardless, that was the substance. That was probably the most substantive part of the entire Chris Cuomo, Dave Smith argument. And I understand this has been going on for a while. Like, this is well over an hour at this point. Well, maybe not well, but my main issue with Chris is this, and I hope if PBD ever listens to this, granted it's a shit show right now in terms of what's going on in the media landscape with Trump's conviction and everything else, but if PBD winds up stumbling across this video, I implore him to understand that Chris Cuomo is dog walking him. And I think PBD is getting closer to realizing that. He's not a stupid guy. What I think enticed PBD about Chris Cuomo is that Chris Cuomo is a high market value person, or was a high market value person that plummeted a severe amount, where I'm sure PBD picked him up on a discount, right? It's like Chris Cuomo became dollar store merchandise that was already in clearance at 60% off. And PBD is like, this is a great investment because he can bring it back. He can give us more money than we're putting into him because everyone's undervaluing him. PBD thought he was flipping a house when he bought Chris Cuomo. What he failed to understand is that Chris has nothing left to give. Chris is done. He may pretend otherwise, but given where the world is going, and I think what this populist viewpoint of the world, Chris will never be forgiven. Not to the extent where he will ever reach the level of success he had previously at CNN when he was nestled in the bosom of corporate media. He is cooked because now he has to rely on himself and truth and authenticity to get views, and Chris has no idea what those words mean. None at all. So PBD, if you're watching this, I know you probably spent millions of dollars on Chris Cuomo. And I know you want it to pan out. And I'm hoping that maybe once you break even on your investment, you let it go. Because it's not going to work out. But I am glad that he bought Chris Cuomo, because this was the only form of solace that people who were constantly belittled and demonized as anti-vaxxers, as people that were murderers and dirty and filthy, etc., people that did not want to take the vaccine, this is the only release we've had ever since COVID happened, like 4 years ago, almost. So I'm grateful this opportunity arose, but again, there was only maybe 10 minutes of substance throughout this whole 3-hour debate, and I think it was highlighted best in this clip. And so if you came to this video hoping to get dunks on Chris Cuomo, I hope you enjoyed it. But if you like Chris Cuomo, I hope you listened as well. And I hope you take it into consideration next time you consider him as somebody worthy of emulation or adoration, because he is not. He's done. If you want somebody who's an honest broker, go watch Jimmy Dore. And I'm sure Jimmy Dore will have a lot to say about this. But for now, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to like or subscribe and leave a comment on the video if you have feedback about how to improve these videos going forward. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.